All right, guys, so I'm going to do the price breakdown on this compound setup on my truck. So we're going to start out here, then we're going to go into the whiteboard. I'm going to write it all down on what everything costs, the time that it took us roughly to do. So if you were having somebody build the kit, or if you're going to do the kit yourself, you'll have an idea what it's going to cost. So now, granted, some of this stuff I had, so I kind of have to fumble the numbers a little bit because I had some of it. But for the most part, I bought most of the stuff new so that I knew exactly how much it was going to cost and all that stuff. All right, so we got big turbo. I'll have to convert this into Canadian or into US dollars because all of this was Canadian dollars. So this turbocharger, which is an S476 8782 with a 1.1 housing from True North Turbos, was $1,500 Canadian. The air filter is about $50 Canadian. This is an S&B air filter. I'll put all the part numbers for all this stuff too. Or will I? I don't know. Let me know if you guys want all the part numbers. What I'll do is I'll put it in the description if you want all the part numbers. But otherwise, I'm not going to bother spending the time to do it. Just let me know if you're interested. I'll tell you what everything is, obviously. So what we got from there is I had to buy this clamp and fitting. Picture right here. That is also from True North Turbos. This piece of this is just a tight radius aluminum 90 that I used just to keep it simple. This flange is aluminum. Vibrant 3-inch to 4-inch, 2 band clamps. This is the original oil line for on the K27. This is original oil line to the truck, so that obviously didn't cost anything. The K27, I think they're around $1,450 Canadian, a ballpark. The BD exhaust manifold, I won't give you a price on that. If you want one of those, you can buy one of those. I would prefer a Steed myself, but at the given time, I had this manifold and didn't have a Steed. Now I have a bunch, so I would have used it on there, but anyways, it is what it is. The turbo drain on the K27 is the original one to the truck, so obviously off of the truck. The flange that's on the back of the K27, I actually machined myself, but you can buy them from multiple different guys. They're about $45. That's the original clamp from the truck, or from one of these trucks. Maybe not from this. It's not from this truck, but from one of these trucks. Original clamp from that. There again, if you had to buy one, I think they're about $45 Canadian. So not astronomical. The turbo drain, half of the turbo drain that we used, which you guys seen in another video, was actually an original one that we worked to make it work on this. And then I have a dash 12 line going down there. So the dash 12 line and the fittings and all that stuff, you're about $95 Canadian for those fittings. The fittings, the line, and the fitting I have into the oil pan. It just threads into my oil pan because my oil pan I knew we were going to put compounds on it. So we put fittings right into the oil pan so we could just thread into them. It's just a 3/4 inch pipe plug weld-in fitting. The turbo blanket is about $120 Canadian. This flange, ouch, she's still hot. A flange and clamp that goes on the back of these turbos was, I think they're $70 Canadian. And then this line, I don't know exactly, but let's say probably $45 Canadian with the with the two fittings, the two fittings, the line, and then the fittings that go into the turbocharger. And then we have this pipe, which some of this pipe we used that I had, but if you had to buy the piping to do that, you were probably around $100 for the actual pipe with the bends in it. But we did use, what did we use? There was some stuff that we had, but probably around in that line. Now these tight radius 90, so this is a tight radius 90 that we cut down, another tight radius 90, and also another tight radius 90. Those are probably the most expensive part. They're $60 Canadian each for us anyway. You can probably get them down in the States cheaper, but that are the ones that were local to us that were easy to get. So I just went ahead and bought them because I didn't want to wait. Then a piece of 3-inch pipe here, so probably $5 in 3-inch pipe. And then the header wrap was just cheap header wrap off Amazon. I'll put a link in the description. Let me know if you guys want links for all this stuff. If you do, I'll spend the time and do it. But if not, I'm not going to bother. The wrap was probably, I don't know, $30 or $40. Not super crazy. So this is not the cheapest way to do this by any stretch. You could do it with cheaper turbo. You could do it with different fittings. You could do it, but I like to do them relatively nice when you're doing it, because, you know, if you scab it, then it's just, I don't know. I just don't like doing it that way. If that's how you are and you want to do it that way, by all means, that's cool. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it that way. Just not how I do it anymore. I have done some scab ones, don't get me wrong, but I just don't like doing them that way anymore. So, I guess let's go over to the board and we'll do a quick, that flange, which was about $45. That's from a local company here. I'm sure you can find them down in the States probably too, but I've been kind of contemplating, Jason and I were talking about it. I'm not really interested in building compound kits per se, because every truck is a little bit different, and I curse and swear whenever I do them to fit on something else, because, you know, all this doesn't fit, all that doesn't fit, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. So I don't like doing it that way. But I maybe would be interested, if you guys want, now this is not something that's going to happen right away, but make a builder's kit. So it would come with the fittings and the line and the pieces to weld together and the header wrap and maybe the turbos and the air filter, you know, that type of thing. I don't know if you guys would be interested in that, but if you are, just let me know. They're down in the description. And maybe at some point we can set something like that up for you guys to say, here is a builder's kit. You will have to weld it together yourself, but a kit with all the pieces and parts that you need to do the job, so that you can get it done efficiently. Or even if you're having somebody else do it for you, they can weld it together. But then it fits perfect to the truck instead of having to screw around, right? Would I change anything on this? And yes, I would. If I was doing it again, I would change a couple little things. I would have brought this pipe on a little bit more of an angle up to get it away from the K27, because it's not touching it, but it's awful close. But I knew this wasn't going to be a permanent kit, so I was like, whatever. Worst case scenario, we heat it with a hammer and it'll be fine. And I would have shortened this line just a little bit, myself personally. I think it should have been about half an inch shorter, just so that it came down a little bit nicer. But other than that, I like the kit. It doesn't vibrate. Everything works right. It does its job, other than I do want to put a tighter, just because I like playing with stuff, I'm going to put a tighter exhaust housing on. I was talking about that in the last video. But let's run over to the whiteboard, and we'll do the actual price of breakdown. So this is the breakdown, parts, what the parts cost. As you can see right there, your 4,200 Canadian, 3,200 US, it depends whether you're Canadian or US, to do this exact same setup. Now, that being said, don't go out and do this exact same setup yet, because I want to try changing the exhaust housing on that turbo to drive it a little bit harder. And if that works better, I would much rather you guys do it that way. I would much rather you guys do it that way than have to change stuff up like I'm changing stuff up. If you're just looking for an all-around, well-driving tow rig, the K27 with another turbocharger is a very good setup. For what my goals are, the way that I want the truck to run is not a big enough secondary, but for most of you guys that are looking to make sub 450 horsepower and tow with it, that setup will work fantastic. There is different turbochargers you can use. I just wanted to try one of these turbochargers. That's the reason I bought the turbo. But like you could use a VS Racing, or what's the other one? Pulsar. You could use one of their turbochargers, do an S472, an S475, the 87, 82 with a 0.9 housing, and they're like $400 or $500 US. So you could do that turbocharger if you wanted to cut the price of this turbocharger down. The K27, the price is kind of the price because that's what you're buying. Now that being said, you can buy the K27. It's not a K27, but a different turbocharger that has a bigger exhaust or a bigger turbine wheel in it, or turbine, is how you want to say it, but we call it turbine wheel in it, to expel the gas is a little bit better, but you do lose a little bit on spool, but not bad. But it just depends on what you want. Lots of guys like this turbocharger, so I wanted to try. I have run a couple with a single turbocharger. I've sold quite a few of them. They work really good as a stock replacement turbocharger. Is it the best performance turbocharger? Absolutely not, because the turbine is too small. But they are a good working turbocharger, but there is different turbochargers that you can use. It really depends on your goal. That's the big thing. And lots of people seem to have the notion of, oh, I have to do it like this. There's like 50 different ways you could do it. It just depends on what you want and how you want it to work. If you want it to work really good at low RPM, this turbocharger works great. If you want to work higher RPM, you need a bigger turbine wheel. So you can use a little bit smaller, even smaller compressor wheel with a bigger turbine wheel, and it'll still make more power because you have that compounding effect. So there's lots to compounding. I will get into more of it, but it's hard. It's hard to, I don't have a way. I want to show you guys how to read turbo maps. My computer is not good enough to do, the computer that I have right now is not good enough for me to do video while I'm showing turbo maps and talking about turbo maps. There is other videos, obviously. But I want to do my own videos on talking about turbo maps. Not that I am the most knowledgeable when talking about turbo maps, because I am not. I understand how they work, but I'm not, the be-all and end-all of talking about turbos, talking about turbo maps, and all that stuff. There's lots of guys that know 10 times more than I do, 100 times more than I do about turbochargers, but they're not really complicated for the most part. When you get into like nitpicky stuff and changing certain wheels to do this and that, there's definitely some magic that happens, in my opinion. It's not magic, but magic per se. So if you're doing this, also too, I wanted to talk about hours. We're probably between 16 and 20 hours building that compound setup. That's roughly, I figured between 12 and 18 hours is what it was going to take us. So and there was a couple things that we kind of redid that I didn't like halfway through, which you wouldn't be able to see in the time lapse, but that's okay. And we didn't kill ourselves doing it either. You can do it faster than that, but we were just monkeying around after work. I wanted to get it done, obviously, because we needed to use the truck for towing. But I didn't want to we weren't killing ourselves doing it either. But something we have not done yet is I had to relocate the AC line. So to do an AC line up for that, it's probably going to be about $85 for you guys to have done. And then plus you're going to have the system recharged. So if you are having it done, you want to take in consideration you need to have the AC evacuated so that you can have, you're not dumping the Freon into atmosphere. And then you have to fix the line so that it'll go around everything. If you do a setup like this, if you do over under, you do not have to, but with this setup, I probably could have bent it around and made it work. But my AC line is kind of janky anyway. That one has a bad rub mark in it, so I figured I'll just replace it, and I'll make one when we replace it. So, just thought I would mention that as well. The AC is not hooked back up on the truck. We're not back up to 100% the way we were. So, hopefully that gives you guys an idea. So, if you were, let's say, wanted it, I know a lot of you guys are in the States, so if you wanted to knock this turbocharger price down, you could knock this turbocharger price, no problem knocking it in half, if not even more than that. So you would knock at least, let's say, this would be more like $2,000 plus your time, obviously, or somebody's time. You have to be able to weld, obviously, to do the kit. So hopefully this helps you guys out. I am going to do some more videos on compounds and talking about compounds because a lot of people don't understand exactly how they work. And I have a relatively decent knowledge of how they work. So I will talk about how compounds work, why we like them, what changing turbine sizes do, and what your drive pressure should be, what your inner charge pressure, blah, 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 all that stuff. So stay tuned for that. Check out this video above. Remember, it's not rocket science.